we've got Alabama with the number 1 overall top seed. They have jumped past Purdue following Purdue's loss to Northwestern. Purdue holding down the 2nd spot, Houston 3rd, Kansas 4th. The Jayhawks rise back up to the 1 seed line, previously occupied, I believe, last week by Arizona. So let's go to you first, Brad. First of all, is this your consensus top 4? And is there much of a jump between those top 2, Alabama and Purdue, that feel like they might have some space alone where they're comfortable on the 1 line versus the 2 teams beneath them that are fighting to hold on to a 1 seed?
I think there's still a little bit of space, but not nearly as much as there was, a couple of weeks ago. Purdue is starting to get a little bit concerning for me, just because when you look at who they've beaten, obviously they have great wins. Their resume speaks for itself, but they don't have the top tier wins that some of these other potential 1 seeds have. Like Alabama won at Houston. Houston beat, Kansas. Everyone's got top end wins. Purdue is, for a while they just had 1 loss, and they kind of just, we're the number 1 overall seed based on quantity. They're not a lock to be a number 1. So I think that's something they need to recognize. They got to play well down the stretch in order to keep that 1 seed. And also, with Kansas getting onto that 1 seed line, for me, like I said before, Arizona dropped off due to their loss. Kansas has the most quad 1 plus quad 2 wins in the country, which matters, which is why they're my final number 1 seed at the moment.
Okay, let's throw it over to Lucas. Lucas, what are your general thoughts on this top 4?
Yeah, I'm with it on Alabama jumping over Purdue for a similar reason. I think part of that is, as we've gone throughout the year, Purdue's wins generally have lost a little bit of their luster. Like Gonzaga's not quite what it was. Duke's not what it was. Ohio State's taken a huge hit. Penn State's taken a huge hit. And those are really their biggest wins up through mid-January. So since then, they've really, just kind of stayed the course, and they're still in a 1 seed line, but they aren't in perfect position on the 1 line. And I'll have Alabama as my number 1 overall spot. But I do think there's a little bit of a gap between Purdue and my 3rd number 1, which is Kansas. I think Kansas deserves to be the 3rd number 1 right now. They have 2 more quad 1 wins than anybody in the country. They have more than double the quad 1 wins Houston has. But really, when it comes down to breaking down Kansas versus Houston right now, they're pretty different in how you look at the 2 teams. And I think it's going to come down to kind of what the committee tells us on Saturday when they do their top 16 reveal. If they have Kansas in front of Houston, then I think you can make a case throughout the field that there's more of a priority on getting those quality wins this year. Whereas if they go Houston above Kansas, there's a bit more preference towards those really, really, really strong metrics, as Houston's number 1 in the net and number 1 across all 3 quality metrics.
Yeah, to go back to the Purdue conversation a little bit. So I'm a Big Ten guy that anybody who's watched me or listened to me before probably knows by now. But it's been fascinating watching them because I've seen them in person a couple of times. They're obviously a great team, one of the best in the country. But you don't get a ton of opportunities in this Big Ten this season to really boost that resume and go up against the quote unquote other elite teams. There are none. So right now, yeah, except who?
They can't play themselves.
They can't play themselves, right? Except for whatever they're the practice gym, right? So they're 0-2 against top 25 teams in conference play this year. They've only had 2 games. One of them was at home against Rutgers. One of them was against Indiana in Assembly Hall. They lost both. And looking ahead, they've got a couple opportunities. They've got Indiana and Illinois both still on the schedule. That Illinois game, final week of the regular season, could actually have some Big Ten implications depending on what happens in the next 2 weeks before then. But very fascinating because I think kind of both them and Alabama, while we talk about them as maybe the group of top 2 to me right now, just looking at who they've played in the conference, they haven't really gone up against any monsters because there aren't as many as there typically might be in the conference. They both have a few big ones down the stretch that certainly, if they don't go the right way, could cause some more movement if Houston and Kansas keep winning. Lucas, just quickly, who is right below this top 4 for you? Who's the closest to getting into that group of the 1 seeds?
Yeah. Texas is my top 2 right now. They're 11-5 across the upper 2 quadrants, 9-5 in quad 1. They only have 1 loss all season that's outside of quad 1A. Their 6 quad 1A wins might actually lead the country, if I'm correct. They're top 10 across every metric. I think they're pretty solidly on the 2 right now. And probably the top threat for me to get on the one line. Other twos from here, UCLA, Baylor, and Arizona.
Okay. Brad, what about you?
For me, it's actually Arizona. Losing to Stanford on the road is not a good loss, but the reality is it's only a quadrant 2 loss. And they still lead the country at 5-0 against high quadrant 1 teams. They're still 11-3 against quadrant 1 and 2 teams. And really, like I had mentioned before with UCLA, comparing those 2 teams, who a lot of people might have UCLA ahead of them right now. UCLA has 1 win over the field right now, for me, and that's at Maryland. And they blew them out of the water. And UCLA is a very good team. Don't get me wrong. But your resume is your resume, and it doesn't quite beat what Arizona is at the moment for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I've pointed to that exact sentence you just said about UCLA a couple times when I'm giving out my favorite picks of the day. I'm like, have we seen them beat anybody that's going to play in March yet? Luckily for them, Maryland has turned it around, because for a while that wasn't even looking like it was a team safely in the field. So fascinating stuff. I have a feeling this will not be the last time this moves over the next month and a half to end this regular season. And there are certainly a lot of teams, given the parity of this sport and the lack of a truly elite team at the top this year,